7:12 minutes after 7 o'clock. New day is upon us. Going to see some clouds around the area. We've seen a few of those this morning as the day starts, but that's going to burn off. Sunshine, 86 later on for today. Right now, 70 degrees to start this brand new morning. All right, so let me ask you a question. Who do you think is more frugal? You or a Gen Zer? The answer might be surprising. We're going to find out a little bit more about that as we check in with Pavlina Asta. She's standing by with us. Now, she's author of 20 Things Every Motivated 20-something Should Know, but also things that all of us should know, I think, anyway. Good morning, Pavlina. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, it's great to have you here with us, and this is interesting. Why Gen Z is more frugal than previous generations. I got to be honest with you. I'm an old guy. Wouldn't have thought that would be the case. So what's the story here?
Absolutely. And I know it doesn't look like, Gen Zers would be good with their money at all, especially because the generation before them, millennials, are quite honestly not great with their money. They are known for not wanting to buy houses, not wanting to start families. They buy too much avocado toast. They go out they go out for brunch instead of paying their rent. They're not great with it. But Gen Zs, really watched millennials in this case, and they were like, okay, we're not going to do that. They are, nearly half of them have saving accounts, a quarter of them have emergency funds, and 2 in 10 have stocks and shares already. And they're basically from, like, the oldest Gen Zer is around 23, and they kind of goes to like 13. So when you look at that age range, it's pretty great what they're doing already. Of course, they're kind of coined. I was like, what's that word? They're coined as the generation savvy. Like, they're very good with business. They're very curious about entrepreneurship, which is why I, love that my book kind of came out while this is all kind of happening. But they're very into saving their money. They're very into, of course, they make their purchases so they can look really cool on social media, whether it's clothes, accessories,
Right.
et cetera. That's kind of where they tend to spend their money. But they are very into saving their money, and they don't want to have financial problems like school debt, et cetera, like the millennials did.
Interesting that they're learning from the millennials. The
Mhm.
millennials, in many cases, I have two millennials. And I don't have them. I mean, they've moved out of the house. They're on their own now. But
Right.
I'm the end of the baby boom. So it's interesting to see how they do with their money. And sometimes, in the case of my daughter, it's she's just learned the hard way, which sometimes are the best
Right.
lessons. So are they, if
Absolutely.
they're not taking tips from their parents per se, which a lot of times we, as when we were children, we don't a lot of times, we want to find out for ourselves. Is it observing that generation so close to them that they're not quite peers, but they're close enough in age, they're not their parents per se, but they see that and they go, man, they're having a hard time. I don't want to be part of that.
Yes, that's exactly how I kind of see it. And I've always looked at the millennials as like an older sister, older brother kind of situation, because I'm actually a Gen Z and I have older siblings that are millennials, and that's just also how I look at it when I'm doing my research on millennials. Is they have a lot of student debt. They don't know how to save and everything. But the thing with millennial or with Gen Zs and their adaptability to like learn and kind of be able to view it, I think social media plays a really positive role in that sense, because not only do they can follow people that can teach them about stocks, about savings, about 401ks. Like, on TikTok, a lot of people are watching dances and stuff. I like to watch ones that teach me about stocks and teach me about saving my money and how to budget and stuff. And I love it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a minute of knowledge I didn't have before. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
I think, of course, I have my, speculations, and I don't like social media all the time, but there are certain aspects of social media that are just amazing in that sense, because you can get such quick tidbits of information. You can also learn how to not do certain things. And what I find so fascinating about millennials is they all went to college, and then the thing that kind of changed is jobs were paying less when you got out of college. It was
Mm-hmm.
also harder to get jobs, and there was a recession. Like, there was just so many crazy things going on that Gen Zs kind of learned from that, and they were like, okay, maybe I'll hold off on school. I'll try to start a business. I'll try to, maybe I'll go to a trade school or something. So they weren't kind of digging that hole for themselves where they would have student debt. And they're better off, basically, is what is what's kind of happening. And of course, a lot of them went to school and like they're still doing great. But I think they sort of learned from their older, generation and or like the millennials, and we're like, okay, we're not going to do that. Or
Always,
we're going to change the tide.
it's always a better lesson when you can learn from someone else's mistakes instead of making them yourselves.
Totally.
I will agree with that. Pavlina Asta is with us this morning, author of 20 Things Every Motivated 20-something Should Know, and she is motivated 20-something for sure. Already, I just, I will say that I think millennials, though, for what it's worth, did learn from their parents in the previous generation from the standpoint of they saw a lot of us give 20, 30 years to a job and then suddenly just laid off and the job had no care one way or the other, no loyalty. So I think that was part of it. I think that the family situation, some of them just didn't feel like they wanted to do that based on their family situation. But I think they learned from some of the things that happened to the boomers and the Xers that were unforeseen for us.
Oh my gosh, completely. I think there's the divorce rate, with the older generations was much higher. So that a lot of millennials grew up in separate households. They didn't want to deal with that. You know what I mean? Like they were kind of not trusting with that whole situation. And then exactly like you said, they saw their parents had a 9 to 5 and the job wasn't loyal to them, or they just kind of wasted their life away. I think that's a huge reason in why millennials and Gen Zs are so interested in experiences. That's why they want to travel. They want to go do stuff. They want to see the world. They don't want to just be stuck in a cubicle or stuck in a 9 to 5 job where they are just like wasting their life away. That's why I find them so fascinating, to be honest. It's because they are so much different from their older generations in their mindset, in the way they want to live their life. It's amazing. But they absolutely learn from their older generation.
I think that perhaps what we're seeing in Gen Z is a mix of some of the Xers, but especially the boomers, because I know more about the boomers. I am, like I say, the end of that. But they're seeing a mix of that and saying, okay, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, and they're just taking what they like. For example, they like the agility of still having a control over their financial future. Maybe it's starting their own business. Maybe it's a gig economy where they take several, small jobs, not full-time, so they can be more agile to do the things they want to do when they want to do them, as opposed to being tied to, as you mentioned, a cube somewhere.
Right. Oh my gosh, absolutely. They're kind of finding the balance, whereas millennials were sort of like the testing ground. They were like, oh, well, we're not into that, so let's kind of figure it out. And then millennials or Gen Zs were able to kind of like, oh, okay, there's a balance here. I'm excited to see what Generation Alpha, which is the generation after Gen Zers, they're like babies right now. They're literally like 13 to like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even think there's a cutoff point because they're so young.
It hasn't started yet.
Generation Alpha, I am so interested to see how they turn out because, Gen Zers, they grew up in a time that social media, I had social media in middle school. I had a cell phone in middle school. Like, we grew up with that.
Well, you're growing
so
up with that.
on.
You've never not known it.
Right, exactly. And Generation Alpha is really never going to not know it. You know what I mean? Like, I see, babies with iPads and cell phones and everything. So I think the way their minds are going to be morphed in a different way, it's going to be fascinating.
All right, well, folks want
to see how they turn out.
If folks want to find out more about you and the book, 20 Things Every Motivated 20-something Should Know, how do they get in touch with you, Pavlina?
Absolutely. So all of my social sites are just at Pavlina Asta. It's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything. My website is pavlinaasta.com. You can find 20 things every motivated 20-something should know, and it's not just for 20-year-olds. It's for, like, everyone. If you're motivated, you should probably read it.
Okay.
You can get that on Amazon.
Very good. Well, I'll let you get back to it today. It's a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for the insight this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It was fun.
21 minutes after 7, 7:21 at North Georgia's News Talk. This portion of